Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Welcome to Strong Dads. Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson, and once again, I'm flying solo because Kyle was a wuss and he couldn't make it here tonight. So, Kyle, I hope you're being all right, buddy. Just teasing you, Kyle. We're Strong Dads here, and I've actually got your replacement. I don't know if you guys remember that commercial about one of those accountant services that we hire the replacement. And so, Kyle, I got your replacement over here. He's much better looking. He's a whole lot stronger and much bigger. Matt Friend, welcome to the Strong Dad Show. Matt, how you doing?
Doing well, Merle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you on here. So I have Matt on today because we are going to talk a little bit about sort of the origins of Strong Dads in terms of how it came in my mind and what prompted me to invite Matt on because of a little bit of his journey. So Matt's a real life dude and just doing life. How old are you now, Matt?
31.
31.
Yeah.
So we go back a little bit. So I have a son that's 31 years old who was in your grade, went through elementary school with you.
Yep.
And I coached your soccer team together when you guys were a bunch of knuckleheads.
That's right.
You were a big kid then, too.
Yes,
I remember you running just like plowing kids over.
Just uncoordinated.
Those were some good days.
Yeah.
But then you came up through the schooling, you know, that actually the school I worked at and everything, and you were always a good kid there and just one of the guys.
I don't know about good, but
well,
I think I've spent more time in the detention and the principal's office.
It wasn't too, you didn't wear it out too bad. Some of those kids are etched in my memory. You're not one of them.
Okay.
So. But
I think knowing that you were there and our families knew each other, I was like, yeah, I don't
want to see him.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
That may have helped. So, but then we got into high school. I know you wrestled for a year or two in high school, didn't you?
Yeah, freshman year.
Yeah, and,
Yep.
and you were a heck of a wrestler for a guy who was young and everything. And I was hoping you were going to stay right with it because I was working with the wrestling team and stuff, and you just had a lot of natural gift, and just strong, and you were a big guy.
Yeah.
Even then, it's like, man, you're going to be that heavyweight who's also can carry it. But then you got out of the wrestling and got into more of the football scene.
Yes, sir.
And so that's kind of when I lost touch with you, more on a no day-to-day kind of basis.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to kind of pick up from there and get Matt's story and talk a little bit about where he's at today and just what has been his story. Let me thank a few sponsors here, and then we'll get rolling. So, Strong Dads, we want to thank the Kreimer's Beer House alongside of Casey's Outdoor Solutions. I want to thank those two sponsors for coming alongside of the work that we do here at Strong Dads, as well as the work that we do at Rock Solid Families. Thanks to those guys who give us an opportunity to put out a message, to challenge men, and to grow healthy, strong families, and to do that by honoring God in our work. So we want to thank those guys. If you get a chance, check out Kreimer's Beer House, located down on 128, or for any landscaping need, check out Casey's Outdoor Solutions outside of Bright, Indiana. Okay, so I just gave a little bit of background, and before we hit the play button, I shared a little bit with you about what piqued my interest with you about getting reconnected with you.
Yeah.
Okay. I shared the story that when I was in my early 30s and I started to counsel at an elementary school, which was just strange. You don't see too many men counseling at an elementary school, but I'd already counseled at the high school level, and I was frustrated because all I was doing was shuffling papers. And I was like, what kind of influence is this? Like anyone can shuffle papers.
Yeah.
And I had another friend say, man, before you get out of counseling in the school level, you ought to try the elementary because you actually get to work with families. And it never even occurred to me. But then an opening came in my own son's school.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I'm like, well, okay, I'll throw my name in the ring. And I ended up getting that job. And it took about 6 months for me to realize, like, wow, I'm working with families. Because at that time, young parents are still very eager to ask for help.
Okay.
By the time they're in the high school level, they just want to get their kid through school.
Yeah.
At the elementary level, there's so much discovery of, well, who is my kid?
Right.
You know, everything from learning disabilities to behavior problems to all these things.
Yeah.
And so I was digging in deep and enjoying that learning process. But I've mentioned many times on the show that it's also where I developed an angry passion.
Right.
And it's an angry passion directed towards men, but for men. Mm-hmm. Okay. And because here I was of the same age as a lot of those dads, which is about the age you are now. I was maybe just a couple years older than you. And, you know, I was strong, healthy, regular father like these guys were. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't any better than them, but I always had a priority of family. I mean, I grew up with that. And so here I am working in the school, and I'm watching guys who look a lot like I do, and they've got kids that I'm working with, and they're screwing up. Mm-hmm. Like they're screwing up with having affairs or playing into drugs or work, and never at home.
Yeah.
And then the reason why this catches my attention is because now I'm dealing with the fallout from the brokenness in the family, the divorces, the kids who don't know who dad is. And so I'm these are my peers, these other men, they're my peers. And I'm starting to get angry. Like, come on, dude. Like, I don't want to clean up your mess every day.
Right.
And that's where the anger came. But it wasn't like, I don't want these men around. It was like, no, I want you around.
Yeah.
I need you. Because I can't carry the stuff that your wife's bringing into me in terms of she's sitting in my office crying with kids. And so anyway, now I look at you. And so I'll share, and you can share as much as you want.
Okay.
When you came out of high school, I kind of lost touch with you. Okay. I knew you were a big guy. I knew there was a little bit of a party scene going on there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then all of a sudden I heard you had a kid.
Yeah.
You have a little girl.
Yes.
Okay. And I have to tell you, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, crap. Matt's going to fall right into that. And you came back into our area, and, you know, I'm not like stalking you, but you come to church once in a while with your dad and stuff. And I don't know if you remember this, but you came to one of our men events, and I was help setting some stuff up there. And you caught me in the parking lot. And that was really the first time you and I had talked in a long time. And you just started picking my brain, like everything from like what my son Nick is doing, who was a friend of yours. And you were searching. I could tell by the type of questions you were asking.
Okay. Yep.
And everything like from career stuff and that. And I was like, you know, something's different in him.
Yeah.
He's searching right now. And then you started bringing your daughter to church, and I'm watching that, and I'm watching how you're interacting. I'm like, man, he is such a good dad, and man, your daughter is so cute. You need to know that. Like, you're going to have to build a fence around her like about a mile tall, because how old is she now, 6?
Just turned 7.
7.
June 6th.
And she is just a baby doll, man. She's a cute
Thank
kid.
you. That's the first time I've ever heard that. No,
She's a cute, yeah, right. No, she's just a good, loving kid, and she's just cute.
Yeah, thank you.
And so then I see you getting a little bit more involved, and then I start seeing you post a lot of stuff on social media, and it's bold stuff. It's not like, hey, dude, like, see you at the Bengals game, we'll all get plowed. You know, it's stuff about God and your faith, and even the struggle in your faith. And I'm thinking, what's up with him?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with you right now. Okay? That's where I'm at. And so that's what made me go, Matt, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because something's changed, something's different. So give me some backstory. Like, what happened? You take it as far back as you want, but what happened in those later high school years where I kind of lost my touch on you?
Okay.
And where was your path? What happened?
Well, I'll just for the viewers, just back up a little bit even before that and kind of bring them up to speed with, you know, where you left off or we left off with each other, I guess. And so I was born in Cincinnati, raised off of Royal Glen and Coleraine. And I lived there for a few years up until the point where I was going to start at Struble Elementary, and more than likely would have went up through the Coleraine school district. And so, just was running rampant at that time, just kind of in the neighborhood, made some friends and stuff like that. And parents were, amazing, and just kind of grew up in, what seemed to be, a really good upbringing, honestly, just a traditional kind of middle class upbringing. And because of their jobs at the time, so right before I was about to start school or preschool or anything like that, I think they ended up finding a place in Hidden Valley. And I think that was in 97 or 98-ish time frame. And so, of course, as a kid, I'm like, I established all these friendships and kissing on the girl next door and doing all kinds of weird, like running behind the car, because then she'd bring her mom next door and like knock on my door and like figure, like, mom's like, what's going on?
You were a player.
I guess I kind of got introduced somehow. At that time, I can't even recall or put my finger on like how that was, but clearly, obviously, I didn't really think about it like that. But from an early age, I was just started to become curious about women and experiment and stuff like that, I guess. So anyway, parents pulled us out from that area. And because of their jobs, my mom at the time worked at GE. And she was involved with some kind of like just computer programming. She was very good with that sort of thing. My dad was working for P&G, and so they ended up moving out. We had got a house in Hidden Valley, and that's where, in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And that's where kind of I spent the next 15 years, which is where obviously I came up through Bright Elementary.
Right.
Then you show up as the next, because that's how I thought. I didn't really think about it like that, but because I always like look back on that, I was like, man, I really like kind of like got off on like getting in trouble and like well,
that's funny because like I do have memories of certain kids who were in trouble a lot, and you're not one of them. Yeah. I mean, maybe if I dig back in my memory, I might have seen you in trouble with me, because most of the trouble went through me.
Yeah.
I mean, the principal too, but I got a lot of that, and I don't see you there too much. Well, I'm not having nightmares about you.
Right. Well, that's good. And so came up through there, and I was just kind of a student who never really enjoyed school that much. I kind of struggled, to be honest with you. I never, I look at other people within my family, and, it was kind of, now I'm like, I see God's gifts and his talents and his glory, like through other people in my family who were more academically gifted, if you will, than myself. But I really struggled through school and all throughout just middle school and even through high school. Like I was just busy doing, with the women, trying to date, and just getting involved with the wrong scenes and stuff. So anyway, kind of coming up, I was doing just various tests and things like that. I was very much like borderline. I never enjoyed taking tests. With standardized testing, I always performed, below average. But I was always involved with like, sports, and kind of knew that, I'd always been doing sports from a young age. Even as you mentioned, you were one of our coaches over soccer. And so I always like stayed with the kind of, all right, well, you're athletic, I guess. So, so I kind of ran with that, just doing various miscellaneous things, obviously growing up. And then, once I started to, I was done with middle school, and, I'd have to even, at some different times, I'd have to go off to like side classes and kind of get a little bit of, I was never like officially like the student who had to kind of go off to
in special education per se. Yeah.
But I was very much borderline, if you will. I was just a, C plus, B minus kind of average kind of guy. And so anyway, came up through, and after fast forwarding through, elementary school, and through middle school, I was always just, I was just kind of a maverick. I was just kind of like this rebel without a cause, even going up throughout that. And, I remember from an early age, like there would be, like my grandparents and like people even having like dreams about me, and like they weren't necessarily good dreams, and like kind of like this, premonition kind of like stuff going on. And, so I was always kind of like scary to hear. Like, I think at one point my grandmother and my grandfather like both woke up and they had like the same dream about me like earlier on in my life, which I thought was like,
and it wasn't a favorable dream.
No.
Yeah.
It was like me getting like lost down this like, the things on the ground that are the little circle things that you can lift up. What are those
the sewer lid types?
Yeah. Like kind of like going off.
Manhole covers?
Yeah. Like kind of getting lost down in the abyss or something.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like, so, but anyway.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
So, what I over the years of working in school, I also recognized another significant problem that I think is in the hands of the school, even the schools that I was a part of. And that is, if you are a kid who excels in the academia world, you're going to be okay in the school setting. Okay, so like you get patted on the back enough, you get attracted to different things and interest. If you're a kid who completely struggles, school's not going to be your deal, but you're going to get a lot of support systems, special education and that kind of thing. If you're a kid that's in middle ground, okay, middle ground is a dangerous place to be in a school. And I say this because middle ground kids get into middle school especially, and you'll see them start to say, how am I going to make this work? And if they can't make it through academics, then they're looking for their next deal that they can hook up to.
Yeah.
And if the sports are there and they are decent at sports, then you'll see them like, okay, good. Like sports are going to be where they go. But if they're average at that, now they're at a loss. Like crud. Like I'm not good at academics. I'm not very good, or I'm not outstanding in sports.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe now I'm the class clown.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm, and this is what we're seeing so much of today, which was even there, when you guys were in school, kind of the lost kids who they start to find each other and they're searching. Like we have kids today who are identifying as cats and dogs. We have kids who are questioning gender and all these things. And it's like, no, these are kids who are trying to find where they would fit in.
That's it.
And in your case, like, and this would have been my case too, like I was an average student. I was an average or so athlete, but I enjoyed partying.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started to hang. That's where my friends were.
Yeah.
And so I hear that kind of coming out of you, like, okay, well, I'm going to find where I am going to be able to grow some roots here. And it happens to be maybe in your case, the party scene.
Yeah. And you actually, as you were speaking, I was even sitting there thinking like that was the main thing that, this is going to sound super weird, but one of the most recent songs that's kind of resonated with me, this is going to sound so strange coming from me, but like Justin Bieber put out he's got a song out like, Where Do I Fit In? And I had recently heard that, and that's just kind of like what I hear is like, I was living this life and I've listened to it like, and it just kind of like resonated with me in a way. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this guy might be turning his life around, like this celebrity who I heard with an amazing voice coming up through school and stuff. But, it's neither here nor there, but like, I was like that was it. I was like, man, I was just like, where do I fit in?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the overarching question that I had looking back in hindsight on my life. And I began to realize how much of like this double life, or this kind of double standard life, this really hypocritical life that I was living, where like on one hand, I'm coming up through high school and trying to, like seeking the women, seeking dating. I was really good at, like you said, I was pretty good at partying once I found out that, I wasn't getting the best grades. So yeah, I was like, I was living this life of where like I was identifying with certain social groups of which you mentioned, like whether it was I could kind of fit in and blend in anywhere, but really not
but not anywhere, right?
but not anywhere at the same time. Like this kind of like guy who's really being called by God to like lead and step up and to assume that role. But like at the time, like I had no idea who I was, what I was like good at. I was just young, dumb, and naive.
Where were you with your faith back in those years? Do you remember like having an actual thought of, well, I am a Christian or I'm not, or I don't know what I am?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question, Merle, and I forgot to touch on that. But so I was saved when I was like relatively young. I was like 11 or 12, maybe 13 at the
One of those
latest.
church camp baptisms?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, I was actually saved. Well, as you know, growing up at Bright Christian Church, which it's pretty significant to highlight that because it was because of my, because this is pretty important, is that my faith kind of started because of my parents, right? And it really started because of my mom. My mom was the one who was the first one that kind of came of faith and kind of was like told her mom at an early age, like, she had seen something, like someone came by knocking on the door or something, and she lived with her grandma at the time. And she was like, obviously she never ride or anything. And she was basically like at a point where she's like, I'm going to find a way to like, I got to go, whether you're coming or not or letting me go, like I have to go. So that's kind of the roots of like, she was the initial one in my family, immediate family of faith. And then she brought my dad to faith. And so this was coming up through Bright Christian Church when it was in the old, four-year sanctuary. That was kind of the early days for me. But I was the kid who going to church camp with Nick and being dragged to the Sunday schools, the vacation Bible schools, the Sunday school classes with, learning from, you and
Sorry.
No, it was, what's funny, Merle, though, is that I can sum it all up like this, is that, even though I was the kid, like I'd fall asleep, in church and my dad's like freaking nudging me in my ribs. Like, I'm like, dude, stay awake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom she was like, rise and shine and give God your glory. Man, that used to drive me nuts. And so, but I looked back on that later in life and I was like, I thank God.
Oh yeah.
That like, despite my, like, I hated it. I was dreading it.
Yeah.
That at that time it was like a I got to thing, and then right now at this present time, is I get to thing.
That's cool.
So like I look back on like things like that though, and I'm like, man, I thank God that had they not pushed me in that way, that I wouldn't be the man who I am today. I can say that.
Which speaks to the idea now, because now you are a dad of a 7-year-old, and you will start, if you haven't already, get an occasional kickback from them. Like, I don't know if I want to, Dad. And now you're like, no, like, I know that this is an important thing.
Yeah.
Whether my kid likes it or not, right? The seeds were being planted in you. And at the time, and especially probably middle school, high school years, like, why? This is stupid. But now you realize, wow, I'm so thankful that somebody took the time to do that. So, yeah. All right. So keep going with your story here. So are we getting you out of high school yet?
Yeah, we're getting out of high school. And like I said, I was introduced to like the girls at an early age, pornography at an early age, just seeking after, like trying to please the flesh. I was a super angry individual, and that kind of came out and forth through, getting in fights and spending a lot of time in the office and getting in trouble. All throughout, like you said, that just carried on through elementary into middle school and into high school.
Can I tell you something? When you wrestled, you wrestled angry.
Yeah, I did.
And it's why you were good.
Yeah.
You were a freshman, and it's actually, you caught my eye back then because you were not really that angry at the elementary level that caught my eye. But by the time you came around and you were wrestling with the wrestling team, and I was kind of on that mat and around watching you guys, you maybe didn't always have all the skills, but you wrestled angry. Like you'd get pissed.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, Oh, you better be careful with that boy because he's going to lose his top on you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I could start to see that anger in you.
Yeah, like I started to get put on to wrestling in like 7th or I think 8th grade was the first year. A lot of those guys that were all hanging out with us at the time, including Nick, was like I was just trying it out.
Yeah.
And then next year was high school. And so I just decided to, so into the athletic realm of like what went on during high school. I did football 4 years. And then my freshman year, I wrestled. My sophomore year, I switched and swam.
Okay.
And then my junior year, I did a little bit of track and field. And then like shot put and discus. And then senior year, I think I just played football. So I kind of got to join in. And there were so many amazing like accolades that, I got the Letterman jacket.
Yep.
Like I'm receiving all these freaking patches from all the different sports that I'm involved in, thinking I'm the bee's knees and all that stuff. And so, yeah, all throughout this, like my pride is just super like out, like my chest is just always walking around puffed up, but at the same time, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but, because I was like one of the bigger, taller guys, when I stepped in like, freshman year into like football, and in wrestling, I kind of got it a lot too. But just in general, man, it's weird to say that I feel like I was bullied a lot. And like, so I feared a lot of like, things too, but people wouldn't know about it because I would never, I'm not,
That's part of the curse of being a big framed guy.
Yeah.
Because people right away can see you as somebody to pick on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
especially if they see a little weakness in you. Look, I just took on the big guy.
Yeah. And I was always like you said, I had a freaking target on me, I felt like. And so they would kind of come after me. And, but I was like, I didn't want to fight because I was afraid that I would lose. And like that other people were like going to get involved. And I felt like I was just like the only one who had my own back sometimes. And so that kind of went on just throughout school and throughout some of the sports. And a lot of people don't know that, but I had held like moving afterwards for a long time, for years after that, just a lot of like deep bitterness, rage, anger, resentment towards these certain people, like in high school specifically. And so I, had to, deal with all that and within myself and with the Lord. But so that was kind of like went on like sport wise. I was always just staying involved with stuff like that, trying to, like I said, find my way. But at the same time, I'm living in Hidden Valley in Lawrenceburg. And so I'm living this life where it's like, doing the games and stuff and being disciplined all throughout the week and playing the football games on Sunday, going out and winning games. But then, still involved with different social circles at school and in the Valley where I'm getting involved with like they're doing drugs, drinking alcohol. And so I come from a long line of, and I know everyone's family's kind of got a story, but just for me is like that. I always just put it like this, is that I come from a long line of alcoholics. And, I started to dabble in drugs and things like that. Now it got, pretty bad. And like I said, I was always looking like I graduated high school in 2009. And then from there, I just kind of wanted to stay ahead of the curve. I didn't know what I wanted to like pursue. It was funny you mentioned, when we had reconnected as of recently, I was at, those things that we were talking about were a lot of like military kind of stuff. Yeah. So from an early age, when I was graduating high school, there's a couple of my buddies that were real close to me that were joining. And again, kind of that curse of the like academic, like educational, not feeling good enough, not feeling smart enough. I kind of pursued it in a way and like failed the ASVAB earlier on, kind of had some recruiters that I was involved with. Like I had always felt like I had this like militant mindedness to me. But I never ended up like fully pulling the trigger and like going forth with it completely. So it kind of went by the wayside. And then, that's what kind of resurfaced as of most recent. And I'll catch up to there in a second. But, so I lost my train of thought.
So where did you go?
Yeah. So
like after those high school years.
So I started at Ivy Tech. and I pretty much had all my I went for like general studies, just like, all right, Matt, like try to figure out what you want to do. And so I had all my credits done to basically get my associates, but I didn't get it because I transitioned into their, at the time, and they still have these programs to this day, but through the dean getting connected with like IU, they had developed like a business program that like an accelerated program that you could do locally at their other, not the Riverfront campus, but the one back off of Industrial Road, to get your bachelor's degree. And so my mom had went through like their business program, and I think she still got a class. I don't know if she even ever technically finished it, but I was like, dude, I don't know what I want to do. I had like a teacher through Ivy Tech that kind of was like, we got this communications first cohort, about to start up, and so I was like, why not? I have no idea, like, what am I about to do? Like, the military thing is kind of like, it could still be a thing, but I was like, So I said yes to that, and I just applied to that, and I stayed local, which, by the way, I firmly kind of believe that at that point in time in my life, I was still partying here locally. But if I would have went up to like Bloomington or something to go to school, there's no way in heck.
I think you would have got washed right out of there.
Oh, washed out clean.
Yeah.
Just because I would have just been not taking it seriously and just partying my butt off. And so I went through that. I had to give up like a year worth of my Saturdays. And so it was an accelerated program, got through that, graduated. And all throughout that, I was just partying on the weekends, like, being late to class, like, missed a couple classes probably, like just struggled to like writing all the long papers and just like dreaded it. Just dreaded it. But I was like, man, all right. Like I just was such of this, like, I just kind of tried to thought I was going to just go up through this. I was like, I'm going to get my degree. And then like, that's the ticket that they tell you to like get your degree. And then that's what lands you the job. Yeah. And kind of just on this linear path of like, thinking that I'm gonna get somewhere when I get this degree, and that never really happened outside of like me. I, dabbled in a 3 to 4 years total of like a few sales positions. So I ended up getting my degree, graduated there in 2013, and then I think around that time when I was going to school, I was working at places like UPS, even doubled down and started working at Amazon a little bit at that time. And then at UPS is where I ended up meeting my daughter's mother, currently my daughter's mother, in the midst of just, still like just being a
partier and
a gigolo, a partier and just chasing after women and drugs and alcohol and, all those things. So, so we ended up hanging, ended up getting like late, I got what I wanted out of her on like the first night, just typical, just trying to fill this void really in my heart of like love, and like never could, get that. Cause like I said, I was, to go back to your question before, cause I don't think I answered it completely, but being baptized and saved, like I knew, when I was 11, 12, 13 years old, being brought up through Bright, my parents never like forced it on me to kind of do it. I was sprinkled in a Methodist church when I first was a baby, but I was like, I knew and they knew that like we believed in like full immersion under the water. So I did that, kind of knowing enough about like there's a real God, Satan's real. Like there's a real heaven, there's a real hell, and real people are going there. Yeah. And so I kind of just, I always put it like this, Merle, is that like it was kind of a fire insurance policy where like he's my savior, right? But I never made him my Lord. Yeah. Of like my life.
Good point, man.
And
that's not an uncommon way that people approach faith. Yeah. Yeah. Just the insurance policy. That's all I need.
Yeah. And I've heard it even put like this, and it's kind of resonated with me too a lot recently, is like, so many of us want the life, but we don't want the lifestyle. Yeah. And so now, like as of most recent, it's like, man, I want the lifestyle too. Like I want to live and do the things that Jesus did, like, preaching and teaching the word of God, and laying hands on the sick, and believing in like healing and just, casting out demons, or, because there's like so many people that are like something's going on there, and and it's not God.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that was kind of just the origin or the birth of my faith, which wasn't really much at all. So that was just that little stagnant kind of plateau faith, nothing much at all. Like, I mean, all the way really up until my whole 20s was like, I just feel like I always often just put it like they were a waste. It wasn't until I was probably within the past 3 to 4 years, so about when I was like 27 or 28, I really, I can't quite, sometimes with the Spirit, I can't quite give you that defining moment or put my finger on like when he came and everything just shifted and changed, and I kind of encountered the presence of God, but something changed within like when I was like 28, and I'll kind of get us there here. So I finished my bachelor's degree, started working some miscellaneous jobs, just sacrificing my body. Working, trying to stay.
You're strong, so you can pick up boxes.
Yeah. And I'm doing all these like very much like intensive labor jobs. And on top of that, like I would always be like, I always just wanted to stay ahead of the curve too with like lifting and working out. So I was like, in my mind, I was like, dude, whatever these other guys do, I graduated with, I was like, they might be doing bigger and better things, but I'm gonna just keep working out, I guess.
Right,
And I've always just been a very physically active like person, kind of like yourself, and so I just like, that's kind of where my mind goes. Like, I think you've asked me this question before too, is like, well, where does your mind, outside of like Jesus or God or
where do you drift to?
Where do you drift to?
Yeah.
And that's where I drifted to. And a lot of that was just, I put it like this, Merle, was just like, there was for the longest time when I'm going to just your commercial gyms outside of like high school, was just never checking the ego at the door. Just never, always trying to just lift the most or, and not in a super, like, I guess it was, but now it's like, I can walk in there. I started checking my ego at the door. I started like, if somebody needs help or a spot, I started to just be more of like a, because there's just so much even within that realm of my life that now I look at and I'm like, man, there's just like, that is so saturated with pride and like this puffed upness that I just was consumed by my entire life, that now I just look at it different. I mean, where like I was never really doing this aspect of it, but you see everyone like online with chasing the picture, the best one that they can put on Instagram or Facebook. And some people are just chasing the dragon of like, I don't know. I just came to a place where I'm like, you got to trust the process more than you like trust and love the results. Yeah. Cause like, you're never gonna like, I mean, when you know the Lord, we do have an eternal like destination that, we ultimately get to see at the end of the day when we see him face to face in heaven. But, here on this earth, like there's not really like whenever you get to that destination, whatever that is, or whatever your goal is, well, what happens is you got a new goal. Yeah. All of a sudden you got a new destination you're trying to be at.
I'll share a little, because you're prompting my brain on something. So over the weekend, we were visiting my son and Nick. And I don't really tell people what he does for a living, but that he's in a very intense environment on a daily basis in his work. And he's now he's that age that you are, and we talked about, and I told him, I said, something that you're going to notice with guys as you start to get into your 30s and 40s is every man that I run into, and this is what I do for a living, right? Yeah. Working with men, coaching and stuff like that. Men, I'll say this, like, men no longer intimidate me because I now know that every man is filled with insecurities. And if you want to know the insecurity of a man, see what he's really good at, because that's where he hides. And so, and for me, it was physical ability, like always working out, right? Because that was the one thing that I was kind of okay at, right? Yeah. And so that was how I hid all my other insecurities. Well, man, at least look how fit he is. Yeah. And you see guys with intellect. They're the smartest guy in the class. Well, then they're going to make sure everybody knows they're the smartest in the class. Yeah. Because that'll help hide all of their other weaknesses. And in your case, well, I'm not very good at the academics or whatever. Well, then I'm just going to get bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you'll start to see that even more and more, that if you really want to identify a guy's weakness, first look at his strength.
Wow.
Because he'll blow his strength up as big as it can be, like it's the lion's mane.
Yeah.
Right. So that's all you can see.
Yeah.
But inside, you can dig behind it. It's like, no. So as soon as I see a guy who's very pompous about when he comes to the gym and he's got to be recognized,
Yeah.
I actually now know, oh, that poor guy.
Yeah, he's got a bigger problem.
He's got a bigger problem.
Yeah.
He's got a bigger problem. And again, we all do, right?
Sure.
So we all do. So like, I'm not saying, oh, he's got an issue. I'm now like, oh man, like I hope he works through that, because as soon as, like I've said so many times, guys come in, when they come in to see me, they're broken.
Okay.
They're not. That's why they come in to see me.
Sure.
And so I get the big guys that come in, and 15 minutes in, I all of a sudden got the blubbering baby.
Yeah.
They're where the weakness starts to seep out.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, okay, man, before you walked in, I was either impressed by your Porsche that was out in the parking lot, or your bank account, or your muscles. And now I see that you're just as broken as the guy that just left here.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of referring a little bit to like the great cover up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, the one of the biggest things that I've been shown recently by the Holy Spirit has just been that, I can't do this in my own strength. Like
Right.
I'm so weak and so helpless, like in and of my very self, in my nature, in my sinful nature, and my being born into iniquity. Like I have to rely on the source who is, omni, he's everywhere, it's fun. Yeah. Just that idea of like I have to rely on him. Like I'm trying to be to a point where I'm like so dependent on him for, not that I'm like not going to do anything. Cause I think a lot of times, some Christians and men can kind of, oh, I'm going to be still and wait on the Lord and like just be passive and not
Right.
do anything. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can't do anything in my own strength. And then he really showed me, he was like, as of recently, I was driving and I was like, I started talking to myself. I was like talking to myself, talking to the Lord, and I was like, man, Matt, you really think you're powerful, and until you think about the one who's omnipotent, and you really think you're intelligent until or whoever, right? You really think you're wise until you think about the one who's omniscient or I think that I love well until I'm actually think about the one who's all loving, omnibenevolent. I'm like, so that just kind of like blew me away and kind of checked me in a way that was like, I'd already been being checked a lot, but he was just like showed me that. So, so anyway, that was, part of my biggest problem too is, through graduating school, thinking it was okay at the time I've got a different stance now, I guess, or a different outlook on like at the time, I was living at mom and dad's when me and my daughter's mother kind of got pretty serious, and we kind of moved out to Fairfield, Ohio, across from Jungle Gyms out there in like 2014, end of 2014 going into 2015, because that's when McKenna was born in June of 2015. Man, we weren't there in 4 months until I screwed it up. And I thought that like we were off to like, I'm thinking like we're off to like, this is it. Like this is the woman, I guess, that, backing up before that, like when it was just like, I look back and I'm okay with, I'm at peace with it now, but I look back at like when I found out that Rachel was pregnant. So I'm the first one to own and acknowledge and be fully responsible for like, I had a child out of wedlock, but God turns my sin into a win, because I know that my behavior was sinful, but like he did not make a mistake with her, or like he does not make the mistake with the children. But anyway, I was so like bitter at the time when like I found out that I just remember even when I found out she was pregnant, I don't have the text messages to prove it, but I remember sending messages that were very suggestive of like, I don't know what you're going to do, but like, I can't have a kid right now, sort of stuff.
Somewhat promoting or suggesting abortion.
Correct. And, obviously that is not what I believe in now, but it was just like blew my mind that like, and I was super bitter and like I wanted a boy so bad. Like I was like,
if I'm going to be in this mess,
yeah,
then I at least want a boy.
yeah. Like I was so set on a boy.
So now you're even picky.
Yeah, I'm being picky. I'm like, well, all right, Lord, give me I messed up. You don't make a mistake with a child, but you better give me what I want.
Give me what I want. Wow. Yeah.
So, but even all the way through like the gender reveal thing, I just look back on that. Like my dad's there, her mom's there, and like we're doing this celebration. I just remember like, it's just so like I'm not.
When you saw the pink,
yeah.
What did you do? Did you cringe?
I was cringing.
Did anybody get that on camera?
I hope not. It was bad. Like I just remember, I just look back and I was like, man, like you only have that moment one time, and I can't go back and change time or reverse time, like But I mean, I know he used that through my ultimate story. Like I wouldn't change one component. Like what I've done, even the mess ups. And I know that's kind of a hard thing for some people to maybe grasp, but it's like
not on Strong Dads. It's not, man, because that's actually, the whole idea. A mistake is when you don't learn from them.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
That's when they're called mistakes.
Yeah.
Until then, they're still learning opportunities, and that's a responsibility on us to say, okay, how am I going to make this right? And I think the idea of us being, we talk about on this show all the time, are you coachable or not?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and really, honestly, like most guys are not coachable.
Yeah.
They'll say they are until they hear what they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, no. And so the idea here that you are like, I'm going to be responsible.
Yeah.
I'm going to own my part in this. And I'm going to keep learning from it. Like that doesn't allow the mistake to turn into a solid, fixed mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that for a second because, I'll kind of succinctly try to touch on this, but we move out to Fairfield, and I got in the most trouble I'd ever got in my life. So we planned a night out the week after McKenna was born, and her mom was over at our place watching our child. And let's just say, like, we went over to Jungle Jim's for a beer tasting thing, got in like an hour early, tried to come back, walk there, walk back, try to do the responsible thing, And that's when, like, I don't want to go into all the details of what happened, but, that's when Matt's life did a complete 180. So I was like, I went to jail, and so I did a little bit, it was in jail for a little bit. And my dad ended up getting me out, actually, because he bailed me out. But this was like the day before Father's Day, and there was a fight involved with like what happened and everything like that, and thought I was being like pursued, and just was in a kind of a brownout state, not blacked out, but not sober.
You weren't functioning well, yeah.
Yeah, and so made some some very poor choices, and so that happened. I had incurred in the overall thing. I incurred like several $1,000s in legal fees that I had paid back to my dad over the course of a long period of time. And, so it's like, dude, like, I mean, that's the thing right there is like, my first Father's Day, like awesome, like great way to kind of enter into fatherhood. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the downfall of like our relationship, because we got kicked out of our current place. We moved back over into the North Bend by LaSalle in her mom's place for a while, because we didn't want to go back to like I think my parents had split, because my parents split up in 2013-ish. And so my mom still had the house in Hidden Valley, but we decided we went back to her mom's house. It was kind of like living with the in-laws a little bit. And I'm like this new father who has no idea what he's like called to do as a man, how to be a father. She has already had a kid, so she kind of like, and so I'm dealing with the dynamic of like her mother. So just a lot of fighting, a lot of me just being a terrible piece of crap person, honestly, and dealing with all the pride and all that stuff, trying to please the flesh. And all those things. And so, and then I'm battling with the legal part of my life now, where my life is like just at a 180, and I have like literally felt like I had no one to help me, nowhere to turn to, no like guidance to, kind of like, I'm just like, dude, Matt, you've screwed up big time. I thought like my life was like kind of, I was like, this is not like, I thought my life was over at that point, in a way. And so we ended up kind of breaking up officially from there. And through all that, I moved back into my mom's house in Hidden Valley that she owned at the time, and was kind of looking to get ready to sell it. My sister and her now husband were actually just living there at the time. So we had this like huge house where, we're done with me and her mom were done. So I moved back home, and I'm living there with them two at the time, just like drinking a lot, partying a lot, gaming a lot. Like I became seriously addicted to like gaming, just had like no purpose, no goals, no vision. And that was kind of the downward spiral of like me and her mom's relationship. I went through like they talk about like the 5 grieving steps of grieving. And so I'm like, during all this, I'm like trying to figure out, I'm like, do I love her because I have a child with her, or do I still love her for her? And I was like so torn internally. Like once I actually had a kid with somebody, I was like, what the heck is going on in my mind?
Yeah.
And so I'm wrestling with like, trying to get her back, still sleeping around kind of with her. I could tell that, and then it ended up just finally like not working out. And for a while there, but I was still like trying to chase after her. And it was just the dynamic was just super weird. Now I'm at a place where I'm like at peace. We're cool. We're cordial. We work mostly everything out, which is amazing. But, so I started living there with my mom's house. My sister and boyfriend eventually ended up getting married, moving out to Columbus. I was like, well, I got this whole huge house. Clearly I can't, my mom's giving me a heck of a deal just staying here and rent and stuff like that. But I was like, I can't do this. Like I knew I couldn't just keep staying there. So I ended up coming across like a sales position at the time downtown. And I did that for like, less than maybe half a year, just beating the streets, kind of getting my feet wet with sales, like, cold calling, knocking on doors, selling small business office supplies. Wasn't really that excited about it.
Right.
So through like, I'm like still like just doing all the, drinking, drug, all this stuff, just partying, whatever. So through like calling on doors, I ended up calling on a company who I ended up leaving this place, the current place I was at, for another place. And I kind of just graduated to like selling copiers and doing like business technology for companies out. And I was managing out in the northeast side of Cincinnati. So like your Masons and your Loveland and all those, kind of where business is booming a little bit. And so I did that for a couple of years, still, hitting the bottle, still like just like not in a good spot, but thinking I'm okay. Like, I thought I was okay, but I really wasn't. Not following the Lord at this time at all, really. Just like living my best life is how I always put it, or so I thought.
Right.
And so I ended up long story short on that, they brought a girl down from Columbus at one of their other satellite offices. She kind of took over my territory. They're like, here, Matt, we're just going to give you your Southeast Indiana, like Lawrenceburg, Aurora territory. And I'm like, I have nothing against, I love this area. This is where I'm from. I love Cincinnati and just the tri-state area in general. But I was like, with little ramp up time to like get to these high quotas and these high things that they were trying to get me to achieve, that, every month it's like, it's
pressure.
Pressure, get the deal done. And so I ended up getting let go from there. From that point, that's where I was like started collecting unemployment because they let me go. And so I moved out of my mom's place. I'm living with my dad in Harrison. And I just became like just this complacent guy who was, milking the system off of unemployment, and finding the loopholes, my little loophole, if you will, of like, applying for jobs, but not really applying for jobs.
Right.
And
Just
still making sure I'm getting my
stretch out the unemployment benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I took that to the max term pretty much, was about a year. And through all that, I achieved, I won't even phrase it like that. I almost hit 300 pounds.
Oh, wow.
I became extremely addicted to gaming. Like,
what do you weigh right now?
Right now I'm sitting at about somewhere between like 230, 240.
Yeah. And you were 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like eating out every night, fast food, the quickest thing, so I can make sure I'm like, I was eating, sleeping, breathing, just like Call of Duty, and just like,
oh, wow.
And it's freaking, it's just so, like, I look back on some of these things, Marwan, it's just like knowing if I just, for me and for so many other guys, I'm like, man, if you just knew what the Lord has for you, like your purpose, value, like the mission, the leader that you're called to be. Like, I'm sitting here wasting my potential essentially by just gaming out, eating like crap, probably still drinking. For that was kind of the end cycle for the most part of like me drinking and stuff. When I was living with him, I wasn't doing it as much because he didn't drink that much. And it was supposed to just be like this kind of intermittent, kind of like, here's a place to stay for you, Matt. Because I'm like freaking 28 years old at this point.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, there's a lot of like guilt and shame kind of associated with that. And so the enemy's just clearly working all over me. Like, I've got so many probably doors open in my life through all the things that I was doing. It was just ridiculous. And so I ended up reconnecting through gaming, an old friend of mine who I graduated high school with. And so at this point, I kind of got to that point where I was like, dude, I've got to do something. And that's where I can't really put my finger on it for you, Merle. But I remember praying for, like, man, I was like, Holy Spirit, God, I was like, I need a new gust of inspiration. You need to just hit me with some wind of, like, to get a fire going up under my keister. Yeah. And I need some new motivation. And so I started to kind of gradually get back to, Whitewater Park and start working out and running. And I think around this time, like, we're, starting to enter into, I'm getting back in the gym and stuff like that. And I connected with this guy who I graduated with, and we decided he was looking for a place. I was looking for a place once I finally came to my senses at my dad's. And I was working at, I finally ended up, after unemployment, that's when I landed my job at Amazon in October of 2020. So that was right around, I think March was about the time that kind of COVID hit of that year. Right. And so then, I started like getting my life back together physically and stuff like that. COVID hits. I kind of had that mindset back, and I was like, well, dude, if I can't get into the gym, I'm going to go to like Whitewater Park and I'm going to become the best person I can at like chin-ups, pull-ups, dips, running, all that stuff. I was like, I don't need a gym. Like I am the gym. Right. I was like, the gym is wherever you're at kind of thing. And so I started doing that. I moved into this guy down to Aurora. We actually moved down into through one of his connections. And by the way, he's kind of, and by the way, my dad kind of like, I just seen the disappointment. Like I sensed it. And this is when I saw it, was because my friend was going through a healthy amount of issues himself, we had a daughter. We both had daughters who were of similar age. He was trying to kind of get her back into his life full time. He was also on house arrest at the time. He was also just on probation and stuff like that. So this was pretty significant because we ended up moving down and getting a place together in 2020 time frame of like August or something like that. And we ended up getting a place at the old Opera House down on 2nd Street. And we lived there in this big kind of open-ended, what's the style?
Cathedral style.
Yeah, kind of like open-ended, and it was huge. We were like all the way up at the top. And so I'm doing that. I'm back on my grind with like getting my life together. And I was kind of trying to help him at the same time. But it was like, I felt like I was like trying to push a rope, where like you can't do it. Right. And so I'm trying to like, give him a hand up and try to help him a little bit. And I became super curious about like, but I want to finish that thought of like, but I started to see, I'm still gaming at the time. He's still gaming. That's how we met. We shared that interest together. It became less of what it was because I was working again and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't need it as much. But like, man, I kind of started, it was so weird, Merle, how like the same way that I knew that my dad saw me, I kind of began to see him through the same lens. And I was like, dude,
getting disappointed with him.
Yeah. And I'm like, that was you, dude. And I'm like, how can you, so at that point I'm having a little more, I tried to have more grace, but it was kind of hard too, because we were kind of disagreeing on some stuff too. And it eventually ended up being to where like he couldn't keep up with the rent and stuff. And because of the, $1,200 a month for a place, when you split it, it's nice. But then when I'm incurring the whole thing, it was a little healthy for a little much for my taking, but working at Amazon at the time, trying to work my way up. But I kind of still had this like newfound inspiration of like working out, chasing after my goals, hitting the gym. I worked my way up to a process assistant at Amazon. I was working third shift at the time. And I was just, I'm reflecting back on this even right now, like and kind of how I know that it's possible. And I want to get back to a good balance of like, for now, it's me, like I want to balance like the spiritual and the physical, like health stuff. Just trying to find, like, I feel like we're all trying to find this like balance, and I don't even know if it exists. But so I'm working out like after, like I'd get off of, I'd work like midnight till like 10 in the morning and over in Hebron, and I'd go over to Florence. And I was so dedicated and committed to like working out. I started like really tracking all my progress on the MyFitnessPal, which was a free app. And I was tracking all my meals, my macros. I was steady at a 236 body weight, but I was like, man, I want to keep all this like muscle and strength that I put on, but I just want to do a gradual descent. I don't care if I don't lose anything in like a week, but like a half a pound to a pound a week. I got a scale and like weighing my food. I was just like borderline kind of becoming obsessively compulsed with it. But, and it's a whole stinking job in and of itself to try and like be on your meals and stuff like that. I know you probably know when you're trying to do it, but so I'm like, I finally achieved like 229, which was like kind of my lowest, leanest body weight. And, so I'm doing all that kind of my fitness thing. My spiritual thing started taking off. I was kind of fast forwarding from Bright, and I was, when we left Bright, it was my parents' decision to kind of funnel us to Whitewater. And I started to like, I wasn't serious at the time, but there was bits and pieces of where like I was serving back when it was at the old 4-year sanctuary, kind of fell off on that. Fast forwarding now, I started to just find God in my life again. When I was like living it, I feel like one of the big turning points was definitely living down there in Aurora, like getting on my knees, crying. Little wake up. I started to get interested in Matt, I didn't want to drop a name or anything, but nobody knows who I'm talking about probably, but just for confidentiality. But I started to see him going to these meetings like AA, NA, not Celebrate Recovery, that's where I go now, but on Sundays they would do like this challenge to change, just in their local areas. And I'm like, started to become like, in my mind, I'm like, dude, like I'm not like an alcoholic, but like it's caused a lot of like problems, more good than bad, more bad than good in my life. Yeah. And I was like kind of trying to figure this thing out with him. So in a little bit of a way of like, should I just like, do I have to like get rid of it completely? Because his thing was like, if he came and got checked up on, like knock, 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 he couldn't technically have it in the house. Now, are they going to go to searching? I don't know. But like, I was still at the time kind of like, I was pretty much done with it, but not like completely done with it. To where like, I still wanted to have something. Like I was like, dude, I'm not the one on like, if I want to,
I don't have a problem.
Yeah. And we were super cool about it. He was even like, if you want to get your own little fridge up in your room, that's cool. He was very much trying to like be collaborative with me. Yeah. But anyway, so through that, I kind of was like, got curious. And then that's when I started to, the AA thing, I think it works. I do. I don't have anything against any of the people that, many people in my family have used it. I tried it. It didn't work for me. I really couldn't get past the, and I know a lot of the Celebrate Recovery, which is what I'm involved with now. But which, by the way, I think the answer is Jesus.
Right. So AA is all about naming a superior or calling superior being. There's got to be a higher power.
Yeah.
But Celebrate Recovery doesn't beat around the bush in terms of what the higher power is.
Yeah.
It's Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
Like NA is more like they kind of more, they use the word spiritual. And then NA kind of does acknowledge that there is a God. And I think the roots of it are founded off of like, godly men and things like that. It was kind of founded off of that. But, some of the ways in which they kind of channel the recovery side of it is just like, go to the movies.
Right.
Or just something like that. Go hang out with but at the end of the day, it's like, you still got to come back. Like, this is just one example, but it's like, you got to come back from the movies and you're going to be alone at your house at some point.
Right.
And man, I just knew that for me, like that's the loneliness part of it was like for the women and the pornography and the masturbation and that's where I kind of picked up a lot from one of your, your guys's, that was probably the most impact, cause I was like trying to get over, I was like, dude, this porn thing is like gripping me. Like I was giving up the alcohol, but that was the one thing that was still kind of holding me down and hindering me. The enemy was. And so I ended up finally crying out to God, and I feel like he delivered me from that. And I was, but a lot of the, identifying your triggers and that you had mentioned in one of your, I just encourage people to go check out.
I'll have to look up what episode that was now. Right off the hand, I can't remember the episode, but and that's a lot of Kyle's story. Kyle specifically struggled with pornography and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think kind of, what we're circling around here a lot is when you, there's, and I wish I could recall exactly what scripture it was, but when there is no vision, the people will perish. And so you'll put in a vision for the flesh, and that's where whether it's the alcohol, whether it's the pornography, whether it's the hot women, whether it's the money, you'll put in a vision to chase something, because without it, you do feel like there's no worthiness in anything that you do. Yeah. The problem is that those fleshly visions that you get just never fulfill. No. I mean, they do for a bit, right? They do for a bit, but they're not lasting. And so that's what you just find all the time with I think it's the great fooler out there. Like, you really, for a while, you can feel pretty daggone satisfied by that until you aren't. Yeah. And then you're like, I'm right back where I was. Why do I keep falling back into the same cycle? Yeah. Yeah. So you're describing a whole lot of that, and that's like, okay, well, I've been basically having the vision of the flesh. Yeah. And then I pursue that vision. Yeah. Right. And so there's all kinds of talks about goal setting and all that. Well, until you get the vision for the purpose that God has in your life, until you start saying, how did God make me? What did he make me for? Can I just say something for a second? Yeah. Because you mentioned this, and I don't even know really what is on your mind with this. And we're going to start to come aware of time here, because I know we're getting long. I know you're still searching for like your job, your career, your purpose. Okay. But one thing that for whatever it's worth, you have a gift for talking. You have a gift for being able to get into your heart. Most guys can't do that. You need to know that. They can't. All right, because it's what I do for a living. Yeah. And I know, like, man, it's a gift. And the idea that you're able to, like, now get into a level of empathy. Yeah. And an empathy is not like, oh, I know how you're feeling. It's like, dude, I'm walking in your shoes. Mm-hmm. I see what you got going here. Yeah. Okay. And you have a gift for that. And you also have a gift for speaking. And I think, I'm not trying to be a prophet in any way, but I think you do have a purpose in you. And that's somehow, as you said, like preaching, teaching, whatever it is, like you've got some pretty good stuff going on there. And I don't know what that means to you, but I just want to say that so that you do something with it, right? Test it and see if there's something there. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that means
All right.
a lot.
Yeah, well, you can just see it in you, and I think as you talked about before, like you know, so you're 31 years old, and you could look at, man, all my 20s, I sometimes think of them as a waste. No, that's how long it takes to mature the heart and the mind together.
Yeah.
And so you were just, that longer incubating process of putting that together. But now it is starting to come together. And, now it's time for you to say, okay, identify the gifts. It is okay to say what your gifts are. A lot of people say, well, you're being pompous or you're being, no, it's a gift. I didn't make it for me. Like when I score the touchdown, I don't pound my chest and give me the glory. I pound my chest and give him the glory. Amen. Right. And so you're starting to see, man, I do have some gifts. I have some gifts, the ability to talk with people, the ability to be empathetic, the ability, you share deep thoughts on when you share stuff like on Facebook and your knowledge of Scripture already. And I know that you're not trained in Scripture specifically, but you already go into a lot of deep areas. And I read it, I'm like, I got to think about what he just wrote there. That's pretty deep, And so these are things that I think you should start to be seen as oh, okay. Yeah, this is, not that you're great or better than anybody else. You're still being groomed in that, but maybe this is a talent that I have. So I just, I wanted to encourage you to, whether it's working in the ministry field or whether it's teaching or coaching or whatever it is, that's in you.
Yeah. That's what I've really been trying to step into is now that I've been, it's just time, and I've been trying to step up to the plate of now, jumping ahead just to kind of wrap things up is now I'm doing what God's called me to do with, as your wife had spoke to me, which I just shared on before we got started today, was to raise, there's nothing more important than raising your kids up in a godly environment. And I'm just doing that, knowing that she's going to impact the kingdom way more than I did. And that's going to trickle over into her other sides, her family and things like that. And I'm hoping to just as far as I'm concerned, all the generational curse or anything that's on my family, I'm telling you right now, the buck stops with me. Yeah. Because I'm not, I'm waking up. It's all right, there's I'm going to freaking war. I just feel that the Lord's just raising up right now. Just a lot of things for me is that remnant that's going to be rising up here and these last days of these, and it's not going to be all Christians, but the Christians who are, ready to, just this idea of I want to be a spiritual sniper for God, and so I know that, I'm trying to raise her up right. I'm involved with if you don't know what to do, freaking go serve somebody. Yeah. And that's what I'm just trying. I'm serving at, and some people think I'm some people don't understand it, but I'm until the Lord tells me not to do what I'm doing, then I'm gonna keep doing it. But I'm at Whitewater, kind of serving there in the mornings, both with ushering. I serve coffee in the landing shop, and then I've had the biggest, greatest opportunity for me recently has been because I've been trying to be an obedient son to the Lord, has been now I have the opportunities to go up and pray for people at the end of the service. So I do been involved with CR, my recovery. I'm over a year and a half now free from drugs and alcohol.
Good for you, man.
I really want to go about it the right way with I desire to have a wife. I desire to have more kids, and I know that the Lord will honor that for his son, because he's done it before and he'll do it for me. Yep. But I do want to do it the right way. The next time around here, whenever that kind of naturally, organically, he reveals that to me and shows me who it is. Just serving there. I've been I don't know. My mom just coined it like this a little while ago, and I thought it was kind of funny. It was just call me a holy roller to my grandmother. And I was like, I'd rather be holy rolling than just rolling.
Yeah.
Like and
a rolling stone versus a holy roller.
And that can kind of be like a double meaning there of like just wandering rolling, or just like rolling off a drug and just being gonzo. So that's, I've just been like, once I had her, man, as of the past year or two, like a couple of the things that were like kind of words I felt like the Lord kind of had me step into were not like, and this kind of came through like Dude's Day and the men's, just manning up. It was kind of a theme of like some of the ministries that we're involved in, and get involved and being intentional was one of them, with a small group. Which lasted for about 1.5 years, a good period of time. And then he called me away from that for the time being. But, so just being intentional, he called me into just solidarity, which was really just dealing with all that like loneliness that, the world wouldn't have seen. Like, cause I would have never admitted that I was like depressed or, had a guy like me think like that I had a problem.
Right.
And, so anyway, like, like intentionality, action, solidarity, just different things like that have just been, he starts to reveal things to you when you like, I always think that the phrase is funny of like, I don't know, I guess I hear my dad say this all the time, or he would have like, I'm not, we're not perfect, but I always like, I'm like, either like that has to finish with, but thank God there's one that was, and I'm just so thankful for that when it comes to like getting in the word and trying to stay, connected into the word, because that's really the first line of what I've realized even here, recently, is that like, if I'm not in the word and worshiping the Lord, that like, that's kind of my first line of defense that the enemy wants to kind of come into. And he knows that if he can infiltrate that area of your life, then there's a pretty likely good chance that he's in some area of your life, and you might be starting to see those things kind of, and so that's, and that right now, I like I told you before, I honestly sometimes don't, because I've been told no and pushed back so much on me. I almost don't know how to deal with the yes or the favor or the blessing that I've been receiving recently. And like, I just want to like that. That's why it blesses me so much to receive that word of like empathy, because I never really like thought that a guy who's of my stature or anything like would have that. Because I always tell people like this is like in a non-arrogant, boastful way at all. I just like, I love when I get the opportunity to know new people, because I oftentimes find that I prove them wrong in who I am. And, because a lot of people, and we're all kind of guilty of it, because we're all kind of the way we're DNA and we're wired to like kind of, be prejudiced or like cast our predispositions.
Well, that's how we validate our own worthiness, right? Yeah. Like, as long as I may not be great, but I'm better than you, right? And so I always
do this comparison like thing.
Yeah, and empathy is, you can only have empathy when you have finally realized that what it is to have pain yourself personally, and then to recognize pain in somebody else. And for me, I've shared my story many times. The thing that taught me that was anxiety, mental illness, anxiety. And so now God has trained my eyes to see that in particular men. And so when I see it, rather than go, suck it up, buttercup, which is still a phrase in my body, right? Like, but now it's like, oh, man, look what that dude's going through.
Yeah.
And so to pull that back around is really what coaching's about, right? Like, no, I'm not going to say, oh, poor guy, that's too bad. It's like, hey, guy, I see what you're going through. Now let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's get through that.
Yeah.
Okay. And we do want to wrap up just for the sake of our time here, but Matt, I just greatly appreciate, one, you sharing your story, but also just the journey that you continue to be on. And I guess any guy that's out there listening, I know that there's bits and pieces of your story that every guy can go, oh, that sounds like me. Okay. And I think our leave for guys listening is something along the line of, we don't quit
Mm-mm.
on the journey of figuring out our purpose here.
Correct.
Right. And I like what you said before. Even if I don't know my purpose, I'm just going to serve. I'm going to serve like Christ did. Like if I don't know whether I'm supposed to be an astronaut or a doctor or load boxes at Amazon,
Yeah.
I'm at least going to say, well, the first thing I need to learn to do is serve.
Yeah.
And from that, let everything else follow. And so you said that without me prompting you, and I was like, oh, he's on it.
Yeah.
He's on it right there.
Yeah.
So
Just go out and freaking love people, man.
Yeah.
Like it's,
you got any final words?
if anyone, like if this resonates with anybody, I'm pretty much can make myself available if anyone needs.
Is there a way they can get in touch with you? Or I don't want to hand out your phone number if you don't want to do that, but they could always reach me at rocksolidfamilies.org.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I could get them in touch with you.
Yep. Or they can, I mean, for starters, just Facebook, Instagram.
Okay.
Pretty much just search me by name and they can find me there.
That's Matt Friend.
Yep.
Okay.
And yeah, I would, like I said, I'm trying to make myself available, but I would just say that to anyone that, the gospel in one word is love. So
Yep.
I'm just trying to figure out how I can like walk out in this agape love to people that, I just once you understand, like, I just catch the revelation of like, I don't, who am I not to forgive anybody? And I just know there's some terrible, terrible things that have happened within friends and families and circumstances. And like, that is we see it every day right now of this, like just this fallen world that we live in. And it's truly, I'm telling you, it's not going to get any better before it gets worse.
Yep.
And so I would just, I don't know, once I came to the realization of like, I've been forgiving so much that I have no right or authority, like not to forgive somebody else who has like hurt me or wronged me or done damage to my ego or my self-esteem or any of those things. So
they're all struggling with stuff too,
Yeah.
right? They're all struggling with stuff too. And when you start to realize that, you realize that most of the time they didn't have a lot of ill intention to you. They were just trying to cover up what was in them.
Yeah, just wounds and insecurities.
Yeah.
So I just want people to know really that like, guys like us, and there's many of guys out there, some people just need to know that there's help available. Let's lock arms. Some people just need somebody to like talk to, vent to, have an outlet for, just get out and do something. Like you'd be amazed of like, now it's like with the working out and stuff is like, you got to have a positive outlet like that like, for me, it's like I can get, cause
it's the endorphin rush
the endorphins and stuff. It's
it changes your mindset. We talk about that all the time.
Okay.
It's just like, it's a huge deal. It's why at Rock Solid Families, our building, we have our own gym.
Yeah.
And it's because, like, I understand the value of exercise, endorphins. You have to have a way to kind of reset some of your chemistry, and working out happens to be one of the best, and that's scientifically proven, right?
Yep.
So, all right. So, hey, guys, if you are out there listening to Strong Dads, and if this story or parts of this story resonate with you, please do us a favor. Share the story, because, I mean, we're talking about just real life situations here. We're taking off the mask and really digging in deep to really what our purpose is in our walk with Christ, and understanding the gifts that we've been given, and the purpose that Matt here has stepped up and made his centerpiece right now in terms of serving God, his daughter. Like, he wants to make sure that the next generation, which is coming through his daughter, is going to have a path to Christ. And so I just want to thank you for that. But I also want to encourage these other guys out there that this is real, and this is how we get on the right path as being a strong dad.
Yeah.
So do us a favor, give us 5-star ratings, share the show. If there's any way or anything that you need help with, reach out at rocksolidfamilies.org. You can email me at hutch@rocksolidfamilies.org as well, and we can get you connected with Matt. So I want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Crimer's Beer House for sponsoring Strong Dads. And so all of you guys out there, go out and be a strong dad. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.